giving is only Roger, Georgia, Chula, Lobadala, Shakatamayo, Gidula, Doji Lana, Babila, Chicago, Baba, Rajula Manamlaso, the Omiki, Japolonia, the Sajaka. 1 year, I think to go on the part of the major in my hall, got that you don't want to long set of the kid or the court of the Recuyo, the Doji, also under the Tomong Johnson, John, some men, Taras on it, you remember, was I did not choose. Not so many ones you are jealous or simply the Dakini, Tabachujan, and the name to draw the Markazan, the Molavanani, Malay or that is unconscious. Around the grooming now, I had driven about the point of your chair. So, that's a bit time for it. The sucking a bit, Capaton the supplement by a grooming chicken, but on says with the energy. Check this on the third dude doing it. On that side, the starting door, your Sado some joke, that about what the garden now in your did it. Now in your them sell my table. Now looks on my table to buy your. Now in your papa last now in your butter. Me, I have the one now in your boy dogs. I'm not. It is a taha or your donor.
English.
So,
36.
my friends, we actually have still
English
something
36.
left in our prayer from yesterday, and Rinpoche said I would like to complete this.
36, English text.
So the verse that we ended with is page 33 and 34. No, I'm sorry, 35 and 36. So may the brilliant lamp of naturally arisen wisdom banish the dense darkness of mind's obscurations. And we have also mentioned yesterday that this line corresponds to that other line in the Mahamudra prayer, where it says that the darkness of 1,000 aeons is dispelled by a single lamp flame. So as we keep reading these words, the meaning of that becomes more and more clear. And here we can also see the union of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And so what is this dense darkness of mind's obscurations? It is actually nothing else but this concept of an I, an existing I. And until you have realized that this I does not exist, there will be darkness, this dense darkness of obscurations. And so then ultimately even this thought of non-existence, so when you conclude the I does not exist, so even that is just a concept that also doesn't exist actually. But once you realize that there is no self, then your understanding has gotten somewhat closer to how things really are.
근데는 톡보고 집안에 가리 제는 자다 제는들이 선남과다를 해야 되는 어떤 인사를 연남면서 남과다지 남과 맹지마도 생각 용도고 말해 운이 용도니 이 제도 때 자와 탑람집에 어떤 운이 짬도 생기 고소들이 만남과다냐베 다도 운이라는 거 말하지 않나 어떻게 마가 장가 따뜻히 생기 장위 벌 싸움하다나 다 우리 다 치와를 앞서는 중화도 지들이 조금에 벗음지 때문에 싸움하다나 들배 되게 치보자 만나과 우리 만나과 다녀 벗음지 싸움잖아 들이 우리에서 서로 뵌 거래 우리 어때 어떤 파만이 요래 나진이 요래 요박감들이 됐다고 나진이 요박감이 샘도 남과다고 또 탑에 돼서 근데 재미지 그거는 삼바 재미지 근데 팽도 소소 삼바 재미 맞지 봐도 고아sam은 농아 자원이 용거는 대회니 토에 다티 하고는 통만 남과다 냐버데 샘 문이 나미는 남과다고 차대 뒤값들이 라고 샘들을 타다 다 토모지 남과 샘 남과다고 레지 다들이 인사사들 뭐지 집까지데 내 듣고요 초와 이 초와도 지나들이 은혜지 라니 톡톡고요 얼마나 가가 남과다 가지 만남과다 꼬바리스 듣고 남과다 거는 랑 말아 잡을 말았지가 매나 이 제가 오늘 배세다 나지 이후에 당고대 이는 제와서 요 제와는 제와요 매지 장미 바파당 삼라당 그 남과다냐베 라 탈랑고 따티한 속이 jambo 만남 가다냐면 책집보지를 따는 받치고도 싸네 드는 남과사지에 책을이라 그 고색 책전 도요에 기초로
So the dense darkness here, how we can understand that is that now we haven't realized that the mind is like the sky, like the open sky. And so for now, no matter what we do, we have sort of an understanding. We know that the mind is vast like the sky. We think that's probably how it is, but we are not so sure about it. It's more like a name or like a term. We talk about the mind being like the sky, but it's not actually really our personal experience. And so the Buddha was skillful in means to introduce us to that, and that's actually included in our opening prayer in the morning when we say, all mother sentient beings, limitless as space. So if you love your mother, for example, then and you think that there are countless sentient beings who have all been your mothers, when you think about the number of sentient beings first, and you have to really contemplate it so that you really begin to comprehend what that actually means, how vast it really is. So you think about all those beings that first of all are very large, and then they get smaller and smaller, and some are very small, like atomic particles, and then there is sentient beings without even a body. So there is really infinite sentient beings. And when that is really very clear in your mind, then this statement that the mind is like space is something that you can actually comprehend. So how we get there is that now on the relative level, there is a perception of self and other, of parents, we have parents and so forth. And so for as long as there is self and other, how the mind can become like space is only through the meditation on the four immeasurables, and especially immeasurable love. And until immeasurable, boundless love for all beings has arisen, this term mind is like space is just an intellectual understanding. It's just a word for us. We understand it, but we have no experience in it at all until we have given rise to boundless love for all beings. And that is because when you bring to mind all those sentient beings, when your mind really pervades them, will you really think there's all those limitless sentient beings, then naturally your mind becomes very vast. It pervades all these vast, infinite sentient beings, limitless as space. And then at that point, if I tell you your mind is like space, then the feeling is, of course it is, because it already pervades all sentient beings. And then you instantly recognize how it is like space, and then you can just abide within that state. So that experience, that feeling must arise for you to gain an actual experience, for you to really be able to actually practice the space-like nature of the mind. Otherwise, some people might say that, that you say that there is mother sentient beings. That's actually like quite kind of stupid to say, because parents are not always so nice. For example, some people don't even love their own mother. So anyways, we can't really help them. But now for us, when we practice, for as long as we still have a perception of self and other, you have to cultivate boundless love for others so that the mind becomes boundless. This is for how the mind becomes boundless. And then when you are told the mind is like space, then instantly the mind pervades like space. So that's why the opening prayer in the morning, just this one line, all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, only this line alone is very powerful. And if you really understand the crucial point of the Buddha's teachings, then actually each word, each line has such a deep meaning. So that's very important.
Yiping lote, Sanji Juris, Nadi, the Dungi, Senator Tsogyal, that did you lot of you, because it's taught kind of Yokota, Dana, Tung, some Tung, or Yiping lot of this, said Paru Chang, this Tsogyal, say Yertil Mata, and send Tsogyal Yapotin, or Yiping lot of you, send the Kaido. That is the Kiva Kaido. Dili quiet for the channel, didn't Yimping Lord, didn't you chicken? Did the department pass about Yimping located what you was a call yomari? Don't down the Tompani did it. Yimping located the court that you need Yim, die only Yom, Yim, die yomari. They be a damn symbol of it.
So if you do not train first in the relative bodhicitta of boundless love, you cannot actually gain an experience of the ultimate bodhicitta. Even if you make a connection to the ultimate bodhicitta, you cannot gain a personal, direct experience of it unless you cultivate immeasurable love. So this is just one example, but if you keep reading those prayers again and again, your understanding of that will really deepen. For example, in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it also says that the altruistic mind is the cause of awakening, and self-clinging is the cause of suffering. And so when you hear that, you have to actually apply that to yourself. Look at your mind. How does it feel when you're selfish? Look very clearly at that feeling that arises when you think about yourself. And the feeling is that you will feel very like contracted, constricted, like bound up, tied up, very tight. And then how do you feel when you care about others, when you have an altruistic mind? At that time, the mind loosens up a bit, more relaxed. So it's important that you do not just focus on the outer objects, but that you look at your own personal experience, your own personal feeling. How is my mind when I care about others? How is my mind when I'm selfish? If you really clearly see that, then you will finally develop some trust in the altruistic mind. And so this dense darkness here, that is gone the very moment you cultivate a wish to benefit others, because ultimately it is actually empty. And so the fifth instruction here is that when you think about yourself, you are not thinking about others. And when you think about others, the concept of self is gone.
Mapjun Dimasib Chumila. Mapjun Dimasib Chunila. Taseku de Romunete, Mapjubari, Mapjubadri, Ramzong, Sarupsong, Ramjik Tabdi, Dimasi dinner, Tamsin Gini or Sampon Rastimulatilla, Daji Imera, Daji Imera, Tamsil Daji Unit, Matabare, Daji Unimata. Dimasi Basirata, same corner in your Oh, Savada, Tonga, Edoxa, Hesitation. Savara, Yid Tonga, Tomara, Yid Savadri, Matuba, the Kotigan, Yig, Dr. Mary, Comedy, Duda Rosia, Mary, Matuba, Dimasi, but the Quachibore, Sapien, Namkan, Dimasi, 토바리오래 타마네 바리오래 남카라 니오 마이 베테 타부강서나 얘는 샘 저네다 다 샘지나지 가지는 남카리 저거 샘은 이메와 하고 된디마시 바리 디마시 바테 임베티라 격강네랑 마종 긴강그정 만직바 디콘지 좀 갖다 토대죠 디마시 바리 요요 바테 또 강진이 되고 사제 공방 털어 야도로 가면 와 무슨소나 독로야 하면 디마시 같은 디마시 용기 담망보 이양당양의 손을 기본으로 해서 망고 손을 요래 디마시 between이라 주문함 제사도 좀 생활을 합시야 생활을 야잖아 대하고서는 딱 대가라는 레스 주디는 다 온거 세도 가리도 다 쌀이 다 똥말이 똥뭐똥때 다 딱게 따는데 다 주제 장을 이제 주되는 게 상하다 똑똑 로게 주는 데는 다들 주망 그래 맞아요 tik경만 깨양만 샘라도 줄수 삭기나 되고 진짜 내 가양만 샘 팔이야 샘때 따사도 파사람한테 샘때 그래서 샘코서 가리도 되고 따뜻하라면 되리 이만 말이지 그것도 타말 시바양서 되게 요래 하고는 마빈도 마세 베르면 주니라 주문함 제사도 드미베스 다들이 조원담다 제네 그다요 말이스 주문함 제사도 드미베스.
And then it says, in the nature which is uncompounded and uncontrived. So the nature of mind is uncontrived. Uncontrived also means it is self-risen. It is spontaneously present. And uncompounded is that it is beyond duality. There's no duality. In the mind there is no division or duality between self and other and so forth. If there is a duality, where there is a duality, whatever appears in a dualistic way, like self and other, is a compounded phenomenon, and whatever is compounded is by nature impermanent. So the nature of mind is uncompounded, just like space. So there is no division, no two in the mind. Even if you think that clarity and emptiness are two, they are actually one. The nature of clarity is emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is clarity. So that is uncontrived or unfabricated. Unfabricated because there is no duality between anything to fabricate and something fabricated. So this term, uncompounded, is really very meaningful. An outer example of it is space. Space is uncompounded, it's always there. since beginningless time now, and it will never end. It will always be there. So just like the sky, the mind has no beginning, middle, or end, no center and no boundary. Just like the sky. So just rest within that space like nature. And also uncompounded means that it is not created by causes and it cannot be destroyed by conditions. And it is personified in the form of Vajradhara. So it is here, there is a presence there, but that always remains as it is. And when one attains the state of Buddhahood, it hasn't gotten any better. And even if one wanders in the lower realms, it never gets any worse. So to this uncompounded nature, actually, there are many qualities, and the scholars and the Khenpos actually could talk about them extensively. And so it says, in the nature which is uncompounded and uncontrived, nothing can be generated anew through fabricated paths. So just settle in the natural state and only understand this state, and that is it and nothing else. So contrivance, when you contrive, is when you begin to think. So you wonder, for example, how is my mind? What's the nature of my mind? It's clear, it's empty, there's all these concepts of it. So you analyze the nature of the mind. And that analysis actually is contrivance, it is fabrication. It is a thought or the intellect bringing up concepts. That's contrivance. Uncontrived is like we said in the Mahamudra, don't think of anything and look decisively at what lies beyond the intellect. So the instruction is just to not think at all about anything. Don't conceptualize it, just let it all be and look at the mind directly. What is the nature of the mind? The natural state, and that is it and nothing else. Yesterday we have mentioned it's the ordinary consciousness that's actually always there and has always been there. Just now you clearly recognize it.
Then the Sawayoman, Nabayoman, come some same did, to come, then we come on, same the only Saji did the around a year, they were around yours. But I did not want you to look around you, so that shakes up on the yours. Around a year, they were so much also. Ye, but the daddy, the Yeshe gets in tune. Yele yobe Yeshe sat. The young motion imeva, Nakata Hakosana, the Tamchi Shibe sat. Nidri to 1 minute, the same quantity. Tamchi called the Chapel, this Saporin will be Chatham Masajang, some Magnan Luya, the young man of the Samasajang Kina, they take it, Sama, Shin Amazoto, your. Little Jinji Sajibe, Jinji, Yeshe, Yeshe, Yene, never so much or something. That yet, this emotional she, that also she.
So basically when we make an deliberate intellectual effort, it will be difficult to see it. And it says then, which is why the ultimate fruit does not arise from a cause. So this ultimate state of enlightenment, where actually is that? So it says, may we come to see what is and always has been within. So where it is within your own mind, and it always has been since all time, since primordial times. So anyone with a mind, because everyone has a mind, everyone has the potential to become a Buddha. And for this reason, there is no real Buddhist or non-Buddhist, because all beings of the three realms have a mind. The beings of the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm all have a mind, and therefore the potential to become Buddhas. So it is inherent. Buddhahood is inherent to one's own true nature. It has always been there within. So these two Dzogchen terms, Gadak and Hlundup, Gadak is this primal purity, which refers to the empty nature, and then Hlundup is the spontaneous presence, which is the natural glow or radiance of this nature. And so then here this term has always been, that is actually one compound of the word wisdom, or primordial wisdom, which in Tibetan means Yeshe. And Ye means this has always been, or primordial. And when you recognize it, when you recognize that which has always been, then that's the second part, She, of Yeshe. And She then means this knowing, or when you see your own awareness, then you know everything, then everything is known. When you see your own space-like non-dual nature, your primordial nature, everything is known. That's the actual meaning of primordial wisdom, or Yeshe. And then you realize how your mind pervades all of samsara and nirvana. Then your mind is very, very clear, just like completely pure water. For example, when water is refined to a very high extent, then it can even be used as eye drops. Like you pour it into your eyes. It's so clean, so pure. So the mind becomes just like that, utterly refined, completely pure. And so that is meant here with this term Yeshe, or to know what has always been.
The Dzogchen Rinpoche, Jolly Mazon, Jeverty, Dzogchen Mazon, the Dzogchen Rinpoche. Oh, the Dzogchen said the Dzogchen song. Ramji, Dzogchen Mazon, the Tato Jews on the oh, Rambi sing with the road, the church. Masuki Jetta, oh, Tato Sanji, Combanshi, Jever Sanji, Combanshi body. Rango sing with the road, the half was on that around the Jolly Mazon, Tato Jews around the Yeni Baton. Then the Ransin Sanji take it together. Oh, then they see young time the job, oh, Ransin Sanji, how about what's this? Then already Ransin the Sanji, they boy.
So in the Dzogchen terminology, it is explained like here that the mind does not arise from a cause and maybe come to see what is and always has been within. So where has the mind come from? It hasn't come from anywhere. No cause has created it. It naturally is present. And now, now in terms of the attaining now or seeing the ultimate reality of your mind, the fruition of Buddhahood, when you really see the nature of mind, then basically all there is that is to be said about the nature of the mind is that your own mind is the Buddha. That is what needs to be understood. So this is how I would put it myself, even though it can be explained extensively in words like it does not arise from a cause and so on. It has always been, but all I would say is that beings simply have not understood that their own mind is the Buddha. And that is all that needs to be understood.
You do take up a man triple lambs. You took up a man triple lamb. Ah, did it send the Tachi on Mambo Yori, Tati, Tachi on Tachi Tabula Sopa. 이제 뭐다 좁아 니는 이거 돈나 따는 거네. 이쪽 책업만 쳐봐라. 제땀 시에나다 줘야요 뭐 세구대로도 고사와 줘야 왜 받더니 대시에들더니 제땀이 줘야요 뭐 이쪽 책업만 쳐봐라. 대담지 이내 말에 니 요네들이 니 요래 니 요네들이 레들 메들 나 리만이 용이 요 말에 대 쳐봐라. 니 독상이 다 쳐봐야 돼. 사만 쳐봐야 돼. 니디 정말 그런 이 책업만 쳐봐라. 제딸이 유자 또 붙여야 돼. 대외들이 사실 깡타에 방은 거 두쟁우는 록다 제som 띠도 르담을 띠리서니 뭐라. 이 사실가 숨말이 또 잡아가지고 주고 강래 유모버 제세제동 이 뭐들이 추지부모 제세제동 숨봐야 돼. 제마치 레일 제세제동 척레일 제세제동을 해오선 사실가 타이바테 대외 숨말이 따로다지 저거 띠리 저거 때문에 대외들이 사실 까먹고 차송해야지. 대상지 동철다 마시나 척이지 송들이 단처바래지 또 척급만 처벌람 졌다 요자 똥포자와 돼. 같이 있는 이유래. 근데 내 말이 따와 마시나 하고 말라 똥포래. 거기 똥포래. 야, 제대로 때는 다시 집어서 두바 요래. 두바도 취지 써더래. 대파서 두바는 다소 직접 메사 이렇게 연구 공업에 성적이야. 내 갖다 안고서 오나 성적을 했어. 갖다 소바 트에. 네. 배세사들이 놀라. 나 니디 좀 와다니 삼을 봐야지. 제가 진짜 또 붙어와 돼서.
It says, husk-like words of speculative ideas lead only to delusion. So there's many people who are analyzing the nature of the mind, and they explain the nature of the mind in terms of how it is free from all the extremes and center and boundary and so forth. So there's a lot of commentary and explanation on the nature of the mind. And also this is really what many scholars are really debating about. But what this is saying here is that the more you talk, the more it gets. There is no end to talking. There is no end to elaborating on anything. Because when you talk about something, then one says this is how it is, and the other one says this is not how it is. And as we mentioned before, that's a dualistic concept. Saying that something is a certain way or is not a certain way is a concept, and we have said the mind transcends that, is beyond that, cannot be expressed in terms of existence or non-existence, being this or being that. So both positions really actually are confusion. So these are those speculative ideas that lead to delusion. Because in whichever way you're trying to express it, you have no other way than falling into either one of those extremes. Either you speak of it in terms of that's what it is, or that's not what it is. And both of these ways of expression are confusion. So once you're trying to express anything, basically it is bound to be delusion. And the Buddha's words are boundless. So it says, however they express, they entangle us in thought. So the Buddha's words are boundless, and the reason why there are so many teachings of the Buddha is because there are so many beings that have a lot of doubts and wrong, mistaken views and so on. So each of the Buddha's teachings is like an antidote to a specific doubt or mistaken view. And that's why we have this vast body of the Gangyo, the Buddha's words. And it is said that the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha are an antidote to the 84,000 afflictive emotions. And moreover, each of these 84,000 teachings is further subdivided into further 84,000 categories. So there is just endless teachings of the Buddha, and they are all meant to cut through a specific kind of doubts and mistaken views. So that's why there are so many teachings. But then if one doesn't understand how to get to the essence of these teachings, if one just follows the conventions and words, then one will be confused. That leads to delusion. So however they are expressed, they entangle us in thought, because in whichever way we try to express it, we cannot escape duality through expression. And for example, if you practice Madhyamaka or the middle way, then one might say, there's two kinds of Madhyamaka, basically those who assert the self-emptiness, and the other one, the other's emptiness. So you might say, I follow the Rangdong, which is self-emptiness, and he is different because he follows Shentong, which is other emptiness.
다 책들이 많이 동당이 다 좋아하더라고요. 다 좋고 랑 타고 책들이서 어디 책들이 고아도 차요를 맞아. 동네들 랑을 책들이면 좋대. 동당 책들이 말이지. 롱네 맞아 오면 아지. 저리 맞아 오는 게 샘티, 적강 맞아 오는 게 샘티. 롱강로 맞 책을 맞이니. 랑 다 좋아하는 랑다 좋아하지. 다 때려서 라고 때려서 다 좋대. 라고 다 좋으면 이게 책을지니 때려 다 좋고 다 줄이 이 말에 때문에 양용도 다 좋더라고 다 좋고 그래. 문일들이 롱레 맞으랑 그렇게 싸우면 가서 먼저로 말서 롱레 맞아 민아.
Then of course there is debate in the different between the different philosophical schools, and that's also in a way necessary for the scholars to refine their understanding of the Dharma. But in the end, actually, they will all arrive at a great union, and that is that it cannot be expressed in words. And actually, yesterday during the Khenpo's instructions, also for the very first time, I heard that Madhyamaka, or the middle way, is actually a great union. So basically, for as long as we do not separate from dualistic grasping, we will always follow confusion and delusion. And then it says, let us practice instead the heart's profound instructions. So basically, the mind cannot be realized through somebody else's words. You have to realize it yourself through your own personal experience. It cannot be shown by words and expressions. The mind that is not arisen from causes cannot be realized through the expressions and words given to us by others. It's something that you have to experience and then come to the knowledge of this is it. And this is difficult to arrive at only based on somebody else's words. So it says, which does not arise from scripture, but are intuitively known. That's what is meant with that. It doesn't arise from scriptures or even instructions. It is something that you have to realize yourself through your own personal experience of it.
명아 삼만심을 공부하셔. 이 명아지 랑거들이 준비되는 공부들이 랑거 하고 싶어요. 명아 삼만심을 공부하셔. 곰지네. 다들 곰 랑거 전에 진지니도 다양들 공부들이 다 좋아지. 랑거 공부를 했어. 명아 삼만심을 공부하셔.
So let us practice instead. The heart's profound instruction is that it is something that you have to know yourself by practicing with great diligence. And practicing, habituating, means that you start with the calm abiding of shamatha, for example, the shamatha with the support, and you practice, you habituate until in the end you resolve, until you realize it for yourself. And also this profound instruction or pith instruction that we practice is that we receive the instruction, but then we have to practice ourselves. So in the beginning, we do need to rely on like indicative words, indications. Like yesterday, we mentioned this example of someone pointing at the moon with their finger and telling you, this is the moon. So first we are introduced to this is the nature of the mind. We are pointed at. But then we have to really arrive there on our own through diligent practice. So first we need to be introduced by means of words, but then in order to realize them, we need to engage in practice with diligence. And a way to develop diligence in practice especially is to cultivate devotion to the Guru and compassion for sentient beings. So these are your supporters in practice, and if you continue to practice, you can realize it yourself. So this is the practicing the pith instruction that does not arise from scripture. There's this one Tibetan term here that which I wasn't so sure about, that is kom here, which means to, here it is translated as practice. And so when it's spelled differently and still it's either kom or kom, so it sounds kind of the same, but it's a different spelling, but it means something slightly different. So maybe you can also ask the campus about the difference here. But anyways, when I was in prison, when I received this from Ade Rinpoche, the letters were also very small, and I thought it's a different spelling of kom here, which could mean habituate or meditate. So that's the one I have really been used to, but here it's written in a different way, so that changes the meaning slightly. So maybe you can also ask them to campus for clarification.
자쪽 가봐 강로 요래 대셔랑 오래 옛날들이 타마바 탐지게 서종의 여탄 남들을 생겨 각각상고 요래 다 니지 요래 들리고 요래 이제 세대랑 그셈 셈주바리 니메가 로주도랑 나와리 참아랑 나와리 저다 나와서랑 그 셈송 알라니 소주면 책들이 진들 빼팽그래요. 소주면은 숨보았당 단지 책들 다 삼지를 정치처럼 원이 정치 강달 맥바테 비지면 늘들이서 직장 말했어. 그래서 요 말했어. 이서 나진 이후에는 저바시니 요 말했어. 네가 저기 동안이 덴발 맞아 봐라. 다 먹겠다 같아. 먹기를 처리해서 우리 덴발이 서비스들이 자모를 창이 발당 당 철보 샘지 관리했어.然后生可能是做矿出矿，跟行了块的行了块的的空的的哪里上，你这里打来个钱呢？这里这个生的大把钱么个有个，从这生的我你讲出的，多了我你的，吃啥吃几样就这个意思，他一样儿子，没得老话一句的，这我你讲出的，刚打不挂这边就一起这个，个人一起这的怎么意思，要么意思。
And the next it says, the mind of perceiver and perceived is essentially deluded. For example, if you have a crystal ball and the sun shines on it, then rainbow lights will emerge from it and fill the entire room. And these rainbow lights are the radiance of the crystal, so they are not separate from the crystal. But for an ordinary person who doesn't know that, who grasps at a duality to them, those rainbow lights are separate entities. They have nothing to do with the crystal. Because they believe that the outer objects and the inner mind are separate. And that is delusion, confusion. Actually, what the so-called outer world is one's own mind, is not separate from one's own mind, is one with one's own mind. There's actually no real delineation. Everything is your own appearance of your own mind. In the 37 practices, it says appearances are one's own mind. So actually, here again, the 37 practices become really very useful. And when we remember them, we can also apply them to these words here. So no matter what its focus, it never accords with how things are. So no matter what its focus is, that you think that this is it's this or it's that, and here is this and here is that. Actually, there is nothing. You just think that there is something, but really there is actually nothing. And everything that appears in this dualistic way is completely empty. And it doesn't really actually exist on its own. It is just like an illusion, like in the desert you see the illusion of water, for example. You just think that there is something. And because of that, you develop attachment to the things you like and an aversion to the things you don't like. And all of that is delusion. And all of that is the same from the perspective of delusion. Whether you are attached or have an aversion, it's all the same in that it doesn't exist and is actually not real. For example, it's like you're looking at your hand and you believe that each finger is somebody else. So you're saying that finger's me, that finger's him, that's her, and so on. And then they fight with each other and then they do all kinds of things. And if you think in this way, this is how you're actually forming these karmic habitual imprints, which are complete confusion. This is not how things really are. So essentially deluded is that there's actually no duality between someone that is confused and confusion.
So same Sanjay, you are taking Mary, Yamsakin Doki, Dupa. But the Indian curry, Tata, same ground, so much house on it, Sajay Charm, there is Sanjay, you will marry. Young Doki, what are the dinner, the same indeed Mazeda, then Sanjay thought to be on my day, same Mazon, so it's good. The body, 7 months on it. Same summer, old summer, you summer, Madagascar. 오늘 들이 샘들랑 이미 학고들이 샘는 남시 실 메인 라종 사지 샘리 마종라도 싶고 사지 샘리 마종시 그리고 어디 저같이 밑에서 뭐래 그때 바라디 취재 세터를 조금 같이 만난 거요 코로나 바에 샘리 마종라도 싶고 미바 동지 사지를 봐 쇼서 Tringi Baton, the Rangi, Rangi Saji, Tacho, Rang Sem Tacho, some their Saji, oh, Tanga Sanjere, Sanguyo, or Sanjay, Tacho, Tachu Chuka, you make me, chick up and Pata, Tacho, Tati Trapati, you didn't look at the time you're in Yori. Neither of time I tell you do Yori. The kind of Tita, non Royal, no such a body. You this one, with his own Jimmy Samataraja, made it the Hako over town, sending you more of a Daji English Yori, Terasana, Takarasago, Lekache, or Chadam Topati, Paksat Doctor Sanitary, the Choyo, the two Yori. Daji makes a touches. Now, what you mean, you are some whole Tango, you got the jeans or you took out the Daji jeans or shit. Or three Daji may because the so Papa go, you must so. The way you think I get their keeper to carry gratitude the similarly maps around so you should go but on this hundred the bar shows.
So when you basically whatever you believe in, no matter what its focus, whatever you believe that how things are, that is how things not are, because it's neither existing nor non-existing. And so then it says, may we attain the Buddhahood of definitive reality, the natural wisdom kaya that does not derive from mind. And so now this is one part where there comes in some debate, maybe between Dzogchen and Mahamudra, because now in the Dzogchen it is said that, like here, the wisdom kaya does not derive from mind. In other words, the Buddha does not derive from mind. And so in Mahamudra, this is how it is said. But ultimately there is no contradiction, because basically mind, when the mind becomes pure, then that is the Buddha, and that is what is asserted here. And so ultimately they are not really speaking about something else, it is just expressed differently. And so in Dzogchen it is then said that now when you, for as long as you see a duality, for as long as dualistic grasping has not come to an end, you cannot see the nature of your mind. It is like the wisdom kaya does not derive from that mind. But then because you have a mind, everyone has that same nature that we all have not realized. So what this is saying is that you have not realized the nature of your mind. You grasp at that duality, so that's not the Buddha. But when you understand non-duality, then that dualistic consciousness itself becomes primordial wisdom. So that is why in the Dzogchen it says that the natural wisdom kaya does not come from the mind. So there is some debate about that, but really the point is that this definitive, attaining this definitive reality, that's the crucial point, because we need to gain confidence. We just need to decide that this is it, and it is nothing else. And what we really decide upon is that without doubts, without thoughts, that my mind really is the Buddha. But so now here we're not just thinking, I am the Buddha. It's not just a thought like that, but it's something that you know your true nature. And that nature cannot be expressed. You cannot say it is this or that, it exists or doesn't exist. Basically, you decide, you gain a definitive understanding of the space-like nature of the mind. Everything else is confusion. So if you say that it exists, there is something, you can say that things exist because we can see things. And if you say it doesn't exist, you can also say that because in the end everything will disintegrate. But then holding on to these is actually where we go astray, where we make mistakes. Because we cannot say that things really exist because they disintegrate, because there is nothing that we can actually find ultimately. And yet we cannot say that things do not exist, because that would be equivalent to denying karma, for example. But then still we do have those coarse afflictive emotions, and we still have a perception of self and other, and we still need to eat food, and we need to work and so on. And then if we follow those thoughts of attachment and aversion, then karma will plunge us, pull us down into the miserable states of existence. So the Buddhist view is free from those extremes of existence and non-existence. But in any case, for as long as we do perceive a duality of self and other, it's most important to consider others as more important, to put others before self. And then, of course, once one has realized that there are no self and other, then there is no more other anyways. And then, for example, in that context, it is that then one can enjoy any of the five sense pleasures and so forth. There is no more contradiction because one has realized that everything is not separate from one's own mind. And the next it says, within the all-pervading space of Rigpa, empty and aware, all things are equal, and in this single perfect sphere there are no longings or fears for samsara or nirvana. So when you recognize the nature of Rigpa, of your awareness, then you realize the indivisible nature of samsara and nirvana, of Buddhas and sentient beings. And so that all things are equal all phenomena are a state of great sameness, like kind of a sphere of great wholeness. And how they are equal is that now from an experiential perspective, when you understand that self and other are indivisible, then those coarse thoughts of attachment and aversion will not arise, and everything is experienced as same. And so first, when love arises, when a good state of mind of love arises, still there might be a concept of that sentient beings really exist. So here from this perspective, when all is the same, there is no separate thought of love that believes that there are ordinary, real sentient beings, but one perceives those sentient beings as temporary illusions, and that sentient beings do not actually exist when their karmic visions and imprints have become purified. As you mentioned before, in the Yamantaka practice, ultimately no real object of compassion exists. And then there is, from that perspective, then no more distinction between what thought arises, virtues and non-virtues and so forth. Because there is no distinction between Buddhas and sentient beings. It all has merged into great sameness. Just like a rainbow in the sky, that pervades the sky without any bias as to where it is. So there is no preference. It is just there, and it is clear and it is empty. And the nature of clarity is emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is clarity. So it is this single and perfect sphere wherein all phenomena are equal. So we mentioned several qualities of the sky, of space before, and actually the third quality, we mentioned two before, and the third quality is that space is unobstructed. And that quality has to do with this great sameness, that whatever arises, we call it happiness or sadness, pleasure or pain, emotions, feelings, all of that is lost, dissolves within this space of great sameness. Because within the sky there's no obstruction, and so similarly everything is equal to the mind. There is whatever arises is the same. There is no difference. So there is this line elsewhere. It says that you be like a yogi to whom everything is equal like the sky. Then such a yogin sees all of these appearances that we call happiness and suffering as illusory. Everything is a field of great sameness. And then from that perspective, there is no such longings or fears for samsara and nirvana. So there is no hope to attain the state of Buddhahood. And even this compassion for sentient beings actually is in a way also empty, because there is no real object of compassion. It is more of a natural state. So this empty nature of the mind, the outer example is like the sky or an ocean. And even if a wave arises, one instantly knows that the wave is not separate from the ocean. And when you realize that, you realize the greatly blissful state of the Dharmakaya, where there is no more difficulty, there is no more suffering, no birth, no death, no change. And so this single perfect sphere is that this one probably refers to this sphere, this dimension of emptiness. And probably regarding that, there's a lot of things to be said, and you can also ask the Khenpos about that. But this is probably what this means. But I'm also not very sure about this. But we need to probably understand it as the space-like nature, the non-dual nature of the mind that is empty, like an empty vastness. And so it says on the next page, it is unlocated or unabiding. So the mind, which is like space, abides nowhere. So the actually probably the same meaning is here mentioned again and again, but this probably refers just to the Dharmakaya itself. This is the dimension of the Dharmakaya. So when you always abide within the space-like nature of the
이제 강났다나 그냥 되게라미 달았다 그래. 좀그 셀 설다나 했더니 다섯 많이 했더니 좀그 같더니 드마사버트 오 대드마사버트 가용 진짜 배가 쓰면 성광을 하시라 대처봐 무보도 치마도 자성들이 성광을 하시까 샷대 때리더라 진짜 님에 봐라 대사버트 인사를 라르게도 똑보방간 낭스 또데 똑똑 로게들이 닌디린디리 저때가 소요래 되는 뭐 또 시치 버라다지 매와 미지도 시바 제들 매와를 요발 맞이데 맞아봐데 시들이 강한데 저한테 뭐또 시치 버라다지 주제 되면서 사결지 해서 주제 노면에서 살 주제 로세 주제에 다 sak치는 곰도 매봐라. 독진의 주의세에서 그래서 다 혼자니 나왔는 진고는 무보던 치마치는 진짜 학교 말다. 늦게 매들이 생활을 하시다 갔다 마대랑데 차요 그래. 네.
So then when you always abide within the space-like nature of the mind, that itself is the Dharmakaya. And so this is this last quality of the sky, where everything, all feelings, all experiences of pleasure and pain and emotions and so on, all become equal within this like open state of sameness. Then it says, whatever we perceive as the body or as objects of the senses is like defective vision apparent through the force of thought alone. Whatever we perceive here is the entire outer universe and all sentient beings, all the appearances, everything apparent. And it appears due to the karmas of having clinging to the true reality of appearances, and then acting out on that belief. So due to our karmas and also due to temporary conditions, which all have put an imprint into our mind, and these habitual imprints then manifest in the form of all these appearances. And all of these appearances are like illusions. They lack inherent existence. All that is created by the mind, this entire universe and so on, is compounded, subject to disintegration. It will not last. And then when you look at the mind that has created it all, you will not find anything. So both the universe and the mind, all are illusory. You will not find anything tangible, anything to hold on to, nothing to find. But when you're able to remain within that state that is free of all grasping to true existence of things, then everything is lost. You will not find anything to grasp at, anything to cling at, and even the one who clings is lost. So then it says, so by means of the natural radiance of great non-conceptual wisdom may all be purified into the original space of phenomenal exhaustion. So this non-conceptual wisdom is when we transcend the intellect of thinking it's this or it's that and so on. We need to recognize here that things lack inherent existence. So the instruction is do not cling to the existence of something that doesn't actually exist. Understand that things lack inherent existence, and then just continue to abide within this understanding. So in the Mahamudra teachings, for example, this stage is called the state of non-meditation, the last stage of Mahamudra. And so here in the Dzogchen terms, this is the fourth illusory, the fourth appearance, visionary appearance. And so here everything is purified into the original space of phenomenal exhaustion. All phenomena of samsara and nirvana that appear cannot be found. Everything becomes exhausted. Even if you try to find something, you won't find anything. And so basically at the end, you find that you almost have no other choice. You can't help but abide within the space like nature, because that's all there is. There's nothing else.
주제 뇌면에서 뇌마지나 다 생들고 파딱지 땅 그 삼면 땅 양상 산다잖아 근데 탐지 대답을 근데 뭐다봐 동관이 들어 중심으로 쳤다 하나들이 다 랑 세군 내로 랑시 돌아파나 내로 랑시 된 콜레니가 코스와리 지저 바닥지다 근데 좀매 다 중심이 쳐나들이 이제 매다 근데 마셔고리 그리 생나 다나 너나 너니 다 생판 조사만이 내 배에 선고요래 하셔서 뭐들 증님 팔아서 어디 답진을 그랬더니 사드나 팔 땅에 고로로로로로로로 조사 직접 보면 다톡들이 그래서 처리하고요래 그래서 라마 거기에다 뭐니 거지 대탐지 다톡랑 생각도 참 설마고네 그리고 고대의 취탁이 라신 찍으면서 족외로 족봐서 생리들이 지음에 생명매가 말을 생어요 말이지. 그래서 갖다 다 대토고요. 된다고 뇌의 인수받으랑 세군내로 돌쳐려고요. 또 이시집을 다니면 또 어디를 다 독주도서 독사 중견이요. 또 받으나 또 담바도 독주 로지 메르트리 독주 로메가 처럼 또 봐지 조자 주지 님이 있으면 왜시라 다 님이나 스스로 독주도 스스로 님매가 있는 돈 됐다 독주 로라 연출 봐라 또 어디를 다다데 주 이시 또 손었다 님매가 하고 그래 로주도 랑나마에 봐고서 대 양당은 못 돼요 양당은 소시에 또 이시집을 안 나고 또 이시나 다들 시합님 분은 돼서 네 소소랑 이시주에 봐서 책들에 또다 집어 독상서 무슨 답벌 소소랑 이시주에 봐 랑 세고 내려오는 통 탐지 이식으로 말했어 세고 조절해 내려 하고 서고요 그때 니는 타는 와
So then as this term here, the original space of phenomenal exhaustion. So this original space here, so that is when you look at the mind again and again, as you mentioned before, you will not find anything that truly exists. Everything that you find, like all phenomena, are compounds and therefore impermanent. So you realize, when you see the original space, you realize the empty nature of all phenomena, and also the empty nature of the mind who has created all these phenomena. You realize that this mind has created all of samsara and nirvana, and what is created and the one who creates it are all non-dual. So this primordial space, or original space, is where all grasping has disappeared, has collapsed. And basically, the original space is where you come back to your natural state, that you come back to in the end after having not found anything. So, for example, there is this well-known analogy of a ship that's at sea, and there is a bird on the ship, and when the bird flies off, then in the end, he will come back. The bird will come back and to the ship, because there is no other place to go. The only place to land is the ship, because we are on the ocean. So in the end, he will always come back. And so likewise, in the end, we will always come back to our natural state. Or also when we talk about the 4 kayas of the Guru, ultimately it all comes back to the natural state of the mind, the 4th kaya, the essence kaya. Or this term Dzogchen, Dzog means complete. All phenomena of samsara and nirvana are complete within one's own mind. That's the same meaning. Or Milarepa had explained, then in the end, there's not even mind. Everything lacks inherent existence, even the mind itself. So then you just stay within this space-like state. And that is this original space. So you're coming back to this state. And so there was a question about this non-conceptual wisdom, and what you said. So this was we explained that before. That's the difference between the dualistic consciousness and the primordial wisdom. The non-conceptual wisdom is that primordial wisdom that realizes non-duality and realizes that whatever appears is one's own self-appearance, the projection of one's own mind. For example, in the Heart Sutra, it is said that everything is the scope of one's own wisdom awareness, one's own wisdom. So when you see the nature of your mind, then everything, all appearance, is seen as the display of your own mind, the display of primordial wisdom, or it is like the a miracle or the magical play of your own mind.
주대 뉘면은 나리 장절적 손도 장디는 양 뭐로 말로 가지고 주대 뉘면 상지 되는 상세 세절적 때라고 자다게 비차비 총총을 때다 이 말이 정무지는 거 네 장다 세상 이 책성도 가리는 긴 바깥에 속에 장제와 그때 중에서 장절적으로 내가 상절적 사고를 막 로르대로 너무도 사절적 그 제발 이들한테 대체 카다냐 베이시고 소 카다냐 베이시고 다 죽을랑 봐도 죽고 막 죽고 자살력성 나서는 소 뒤면 다 쓰이던 로그 이제 소제 대지에 가대나다 그 내가 쓰이던 코와 마다만 다들 장주는 특기 되게 고통 그래 남편 탈톡도 받자단 바지 남카들은 타요 말하지 되는 생긴 타요 말이 너는 타면은 생긴 타 맞대 버렸더니 사지에 꺼서 그들 생긴 피 네 요거요래 소지면 다시 좀 조금지 빈디 누군조 유지도들 내가 빈바 고속고 된바 사속도 나고 된바 이거더니 빈디 누구요 내가 빈바단 사속대와 추중걸로 배나 사실 고속은 제바틀래 빈디 누구요 유지는 넣었다 왜지 다 상지 서지동 상지 제바틀래 요래 빈디 누구요 유지너 대전 가당량도 29. 대전 가당량도 29. 가당량도 29는 죽고 남가다. 죽고 저살 뱀나. 다 죽고 저살 톱성은 이 휴가를 놓고 죽고 주면 제발 저거 대성을 가당량도 29 소지면 다시도 저거 빈디 누구 저거 유진어서 내가 비바 어떻게 대바 다섯 상지 공방 톱톱바 demba니 너나 다들 상지 것은 휴거를 놓고 죽고 다바들자라더니 죽어다 놓고 들이 마다바들자라 죽고 들이 죽어다 봐놔도 다 상지 것은 대바철에 단들이 연구열에 탐지거든요 섭지 상지 비바다 내외 저지 들이 상지 대바철에 동그래서 빈디 누구뇨 유진을 듭다른데 다톡 토발소스.
So there's this verse here that says, may all be purified. So this term purified here, and again, there is a very similar spelling for that in the Tibetan. In the old text that Rinpoche said I had when I was in prison, it was spelled differently, and then it would also mean something else. But again, this text was very small, and I don't have it anymore.
멈타지 남고 탈톡 좀 받았다 뭐 생기라 마담 타요 말이지. 다 생기 저도 씨나. 생기 저도 씨나. 대바도 사지 씨죠. 저 생기 무슨 사지야.不相信没打个送的，实际多少都사지 생기他们사지 차송人家不相信没打个送有的点到我的근데 소리면 다 생기 씨나 사지야 씨 공급핀다니까 사지 거기에 조금 있는 노동대 요래스.
So this little book that I've had on this text, I already gave that for Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche actually. There's basically three versions of this word. It could either be purified, depending on how you spell it. It can be purified, cleansed or cleared away, and also like maybe it has to do with like through practice, for example, or training. So maybe you also want to clarify that with the Khenpos, which one it is. And then it says, at that time, may we gain the ultimate unobstructed fruition, and with a wisdom Buddha form as vast and limitless as sky, become wish-granting jewels, providing benefit and happiness to beings everywhere throughout the whole infinity of space and time. So here then one has already arrived at the kingdom of the Dharmakaya, so attained enlightenment. And then it says to beings everywhere throughout the whole infinity of space and time, so throughout the 10 directions and the 4 times, everywhere, to beings everywhere, Buddhas will manifest for as long as samsara exists. In the King of Aspiration prayers also it says that the extent of sentient beings is as vast as the sky, and however many sentient beings there are, this is the extent of my aspiration, so it is as vast as the sky. And the Buddhas will appear for as long as sentient beings exist. And only when sentient beings do not exist anymore, then then everyone has attained enlightenment. Then it is just like all the wood has become fire already, and then there's only fire, so everyone has attained enlightenment. And until then, the Buddhas will appear and benefit sentient beings through the 3 kayas. So it is said here it says you become a wish-granting jewel, providing benefit and happiness. Benefit and happiness is that there is the temporary benefit, and that is to benefit beings through the relative truth. And then there's the ultimate happiness, which is the ultimate truth. So the Buddhas will continue to appear. From the Dharmakaya appears the Sambhogakaya, and from there the Nirmanakayas. The Dharmakayas and Sambhogakayas are those who benefit beings of pure karmas, and then the Nirmanakayas appear to benefit impure sentient beings. But the activities of the Buddhas will continue to manifest, to bring about the benefit and happiness of all sentient beings for as long as sentient beings exist.
단인들 책이 요리돼 저는 되다 다당가서 냠니께는 몇절째는 상계 보고 요리스 저기 마음을 몇절 짜리 제면 특별값이 지거라 랑지 것도 뭐 특게 봐 되네 생황을 대신에 또 그들이랑 세계적인 상계를 군도서 특게 봐 요리 송을 다시 주어서 군당 특게 봐 용기 송송 군도서 특게 봐도 곱잡아고 라크랑 나서 하고를 집값이 요리스 군도서 특게 봐 요리스.
So for now, as long as we are at this level of practice on the path, we need to make an effort in practice until we attain enlightenment. So now we need to make an effort, but there's a time in the future, it says, where effort is no longer required and where it happens naturally, and that is then called the state of Samantabhadra's, the truth of Samantabhadra's great compassion. And so here, just through the power of Buddha nature itself, sentient beings will attain enlightenment.
책나가 책가는 제일 젊고 집안에 저기 빠트로듯이 너지 장강하고 라지 줘 너서 선발서 봐 그래서 진이디 매년도 들어가는데 저게 특별히 말까지 금당 특제들만 정지성하고 롱진 준비돼 봐야 이것도 잡지 제절제 손나세.
So these last lines, here Rinpoche just read them, and so it says, merely hearing this is sure to bring liberation. Thus Vajradhara praised the supreme of paths. What need is there to mention holding it in mind? May the truth of Dharmata swiftly bring liberation. When it's difficult for students to follow effort-based vehicles, the teachings of Samantabhadri's wisdom mind will arise. May these essential teachings, praised in such statements, pervade the whole universe, spreading everywhere far and wide.
Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Thank you. Om Mani.
So, liebe Dharma-Freunde, dear Dharma Friends, um 14 Uhr gibt es wieder die Frage- und Antwortstunde mit den beiden Campos. At 2 p.m. we have again the question and answers with both campos. Wir haben in unserem Shop sehr kostbare Yeshe Tsogyal Statuen. We have in the shop very precious Yeshe Tsogyal statues. Also the new Mudra Buch, neues Mudra Buch. Und es gibt ja diese Schatzvasen von